Hello and good afternoon to all of those who are joining us. We will get started in a second. It's really lovely to have you here. Welcome those of you who have come before. Great to see those of you who are new. Okay, I'm just going to wait a few more minutes to get everybody to sign in. And we've got a special guest with us today who's going to be reading our story. And I'm going to start off again by asking all of you to tell me who you are and where you're calling from. So before we do, we've just gone straight to my special friend Joe, who is going to be reading the story today. So hi, Joe.
Hello. Hi, everybody. How lovely to be here.
So we'll start with what we do normally each week. We'll get you to tell us who you are and, if you want, how old you are and where you are calling from. So we've got Paula, who I remember, Paula, you weren't Paula, you were Charlie and somebody, weren't you? I can't remember who this somebody is, so perhaps you can tell me. We've got my niece and nephew again today, I can see. So we've got Lily May and Noah. Who else we got? Who else is here? Tell us who you are, maybe how old you are, where you're calling from. We've got Oriane and Oshi from Buckfastleigh. Welcome, both of you. We tend to have lots of people of different ages calling in, so it's always really lovely to welcome you wherever you're calling from. So if you know how to use the chat box, it's a little button at the bottom of your screen. You can just tell us who you are, your names and where you're calling from. So we've got Charlie and Thomas, age 10 and 7. We've got Bo from Birmingham, age 6. Lovely to see you, Bo. Now, before we start, I'll just remind you again today of what we do in these sessions. So in a second, I'm going to hand over to Jo and she's going to read you the story and she will show the story on the screen. And you can decide for yourself whether you want to read along with Jo or whether you prefer to close your eyes and just listen to the story and let your imagination do all of the telling for you. So it's up to you how you want to listen. A couple more people coming in. We've got Jessica, age 7. Lovely to see you, Jessica. And I can see we've got a question already. We've got Elodie, age 3 from Leeds. Lovely to see you here, Elodie. And Paula says, my mum knew you in university. Well, I wonder who you are then. We'll have to talk about that another time. That is interesting to know, Charlie. Thank you for telling me. Okay, so I think, we've got a few more. Megan, 6, and Natasha, 3. Wonderful. I think if we're ready, Jo, I'm going to hand over to you. And as I said, Jo's going to tell us the story today. So she'll start sharing her screen in a second. And I'm going to make sure that we're looking at Jo and not looking at me. And then whenever you're ready, Jo, it's over to you. Oh, one more, sorry, really quickly. Evie, age 7, has just said hello as well. Thanks, Jo.
Good. So can you see my screen, Rachel? You can be my...
Yes, yeah, perfect.
Fabulous. Thank you, Rachel, and hello to everybody out there. It's so lovely to have you joining us this afternoon. I've got my special birdie scarf on. Can you see? I've got a few birds twittering around my neck today as we join Seagull and find out all about his ordinary nest. So let's go. It was time for the annual nest building competition on the beach, and Seagull was very excited as this year was his first time entering the event. He was also rather nervous as he had heard that there were lots of expert nest makers planning to enter this year. When he arrived, the beach was buzzing with excited birds, all flapping their wings, eager to get started. Crab, who was this year's judge, blew her whistle loudly to get everyone's attention. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this year's nest building competition, where we will search for the best nester. You have exactly 1 hour to build the best nest possible, shouted Crab to the excited flocks of birds. The rule is that you can only use objects that you find on this beach. Ready, steady, go. And she blew her whistle 3 times to start the competition. Seagull was excited to start and hopped off down the beach in search of some materials for his nest. But everywhere he looked, there were just pieces of old plastic. He couldn't find any twigs or feathers or leaves, just endless piles of plastic. Old bottle tops and crisp packets, straws and plastic bags littered the beach, but there were no twigs or leaves in sight. He looked around, panicking, to see what everyone else was doing, and realised they were all using the pieces of plastic to make their nests. He stood and watched for a moment, completely bewildered. He had never seen anyone build a nest out of plastic before, and he simply didn't know how to do it. The only nest that Seagull knew how to build was one made using twigs and feathers and leaves. He walked sadly along the shoreline, starting to wish that he'd never come, when suddenly he saw a little tiny row of bushes off in the distance. He flapped over and was delighted to see that there were some branches with leaves and even a few feathers tucked right inside the bushes. There were just 10 minutes left before the final whistle blew. He might just have time to make something. Seagull quickly broke off some of the twigs with his beak and got to work building as fast as he could. He weaved and tucked and poked and prodded, and pretty soon his little nest took shape. After a frantic flurry to add some feathers, he stood back to take a look and felt really quite pleased with his achievement, despite not having much time. It was, in fact, the best nest he'd ever built. He stood up proudly and turned around to survey the other birds' nests. However, when he looked around the beach, he soon realised that because everyone else's nest had been made with colourful bits of old plastic, his nest was the dullest, most ordinary-looking nest on the entire beach. Seagull dropped his head in despair, feeling really rather glum. At that moment, the whistle blew 3 times. The time was up. Crab asked all of the participants to stand in a line behind their nests, and she then started walking along the line of nests to do the judging and decide who this year's best nester was going to be. Crab stopped in front of Sparrow's nest first. Sparrow's nest was glistening in the sun and seemed to be sparkling and shining like a rainbow. Seagull had never seen anything like it before in his life. He hopped over to Sparrow and said, "Sparrow, your nest looks like it's made from leaves that sparkle in the sun. I've never seen anything like this in a nest before. Where did they come from?" "They're not leaves, Seagull," said Sparrow, shaking her little head. "They're crisp packets. They're always floating around on the beach these days, and I kept getting my little wings caught up in them this morning, and so I decided to use them to build my nest." The next nest to catch Crab's eye was Heron's. His nest was billowing in the wind and looked like the warmest, cosiest nest that Seagull had ever seen. "Heron, your nest looks like it's made from the most billowing feathers I've ever seen," said Seagull, looking admiringly at Heron's nest. "Where did they come from?" "They're not feathers," said Heron, shaking his head. "They're plastic bags. I found them bobbing in the water and kept getting my feet stuck in the handles, and so decided to bring them to shore and use them for my nest." Seagull was starting to feel even more miserable about his nest. His leaves were not shiny like Sparrow's plastic crisp packets, and his feathers were not bright or billowy like Heron's plastic bag. He felt very nervous about what Crab might say about his simple-looking nest. Next up was Crow's nest. Crow had built herself a really tall nest, far taller than any of the other nests on the beach. Seagull was astounded. "I've never seen twigs like that in a nest before, Crow. They're so tall and so colourful. Where did they come from?" "They're not twigs, Seagull," said Crow, shaking her head. "They're plastic straws. I found them stuck in the sand and kept getting my beak stuck inside them, so I decided to use them to build my nest." Crab continued walking along the lines of nests, stopping now and then to peer closely at some of the brightly coloured nests. When it came to Seagull's nest, Crab slowed down and nodded quietly to herself, but didn't stop. Seagull looked glumly at his very ordinary-looking nest and realised that it was nothing special, not even special enough to make Crab stop. He let out a big sigh, and his wings drooped. At that moment, the whistle blew again. Judging time was over, and it was time for Crab to announce the winner. Crab scrambled up onto a large rock and addressed the eager crowd, all of the birds jostling excitedly to hear whose nest was the best nest. "Congratulations, everyone, on coming down today for this year's nest building competition," said Crab. "There are some really big, bright, cosy looking nests on the beach today, and a lot of effort has gone into building these nests. However, one nest really stood out today as the clear winner. This year's Best Nest Award goes to Seagull." Seagull coughed and spluttered in disbelief. But my nest isn't shiny like sparrows, or cosy like herons, or tall like crows. I've only used ordinary things to make my nest," said Seagull, feeling both excited and confused at the same time. "And that is why you are the winner, Seagull," said Crab with a very big smile. "Out of all the nests on the beach today, your nest is the only one that is made from natural materials. Every other bird here has made their nest using plastic. It's very easy for birds to get their wings stuck in crisp packets, their feet stuck in plastic bags, and their beaks stuck in straws. You're the only one who went to a lot of trouble to find safe materials to build your nest, and the only nest on this beach that will not harm any other creatures. Your nest might look ordinary, but it is the best nest a bird can make." And with that, Crab scuttled over to Seagull and handed him a rather large rosette saying, "Best Nester." Everyone cheered and flapped their wings in appreciation and then crowded around Seagull to admire his nest. "One more announcement," said Crab, who had climbed back onto the rock. "Seagull, I have decided that because you built such a wonderful nest, there will be an extra rule in the competition next year. All nests can only be built from natural materials. And I would like to invite you to come and join me as guest judge to make sure that no plastic is used and that all birds build the best nests that birds can build." And with that, all of the birds chirped and cheeped and clapped and cheered. And Seagull realised that this really was the best nest that he'd ever built. So, having heard about Seagull and his best nest, a nest that turned out to be very different from that of the other birds, I wonder if you can tell me, what do you think is the message that we're taking away from this story today? What are the words or ideas that maybe pop into your head just now? Perhaps you could type it into the chat box, or maybe ask a grown-up to help if you need to. Have a little think and let's have a look at your ideas. Oh, some good ideas coming in here. Thank you. Don't litter, put your rubbish in the bin. Top tip. Don't use plastics. That's a good one, another one there. Anybody else have got any ideas about what ideas this story made you think of? Yes, well done. Don't drop your litter in the first place. Recycle. There are some really wise words coming in from you people out there. How lovely to see. Yes, don't hurt the animals. Don't use your plastic, put it in a bin. There are some really super words coming in here. How did the story make you feel? Here's another little think to have a reflection about. How did that story make you feel as you were listening to it? What words perhaps spring to mind? Yeah, disappointed, a bit sad. Yes, I think that's right. Lovely ideas, but also, of course, happy at the end because that seagull, that lovely seagull and his ordinary nest won, didn't he? There's a moment, I'm going to take you back now towards the beginning of the story. There's a moment towards the beginning, isn't there, when we're told that poor Seagull feels rather bewildered as he stands and watches the other birds beginning to make their nests. Now, I love the word bewildered. I think it's a lovely and interesting word, but it means confusing or perplexed. Can you think why he might be so confused as he watches all the other birds making their nests out of what they are finding on the beach? I felt a bit sad for him at that point. Why did you think he might be feeling confused watching the birds make their nests from all the plastic. Already some lovely answers popping in to the chat box. Well done. Yeah, super. Because it's not normal, is it? The birds aren't used to scavenging on the beach and finding man-made items there because it's harmful to them. Yes, he's definitely confused and perplexed. He's never seen that kind of stuff before. Certainly, they were unusual building materials. Well done. Some really lovely answers coming in here. Of course, he wouldn't know how to build a nest out of plastic, would he? And they certainly didn't like it. Lovely responses here. Thank you, people. I think I felt rather sorry for those birds in the story, though. After all, they had tried their hardest to make beautiful nests, and they certainly sounded lovely, didn't they? They were colourful and sparkly, once described as looking a bit like a rainbow. But of course, all the things they had used were also capable of causing harm to the wildlife, weren't they? The crisp packets, the plastic bags, the straws. It's not their fault, though, is it? Whose fault was it, do you think, that the only available materials were on the beach? Whose fault was it? I think that's right. Yes, it's the people, isn't it? It's the humans who also no doubt enjoy the beach, but they carelessly drop their rubbish. They don't care about it. Some super answers here. Thank you. Yes, humans and people. Exactly so. I wonder if you've ever taken time to have a look at the natural spaces and areas around you. Maybe you live near a park. Maybe you live in the countryside. Maybe you're even lucky enough to live near a beach. I would certainly envy that. Have you ever spotted any rubbish lying around? Perhaps you'd like to share a reflection of some of the things that you've seen when you're out and about near you. What kind of things have you seen out and about? Have you seen any rubbish? People replying yes, sadly, here in the chat. Plastic in the ocean. Yes, yes. There's definitely litter coming through, isn't there? And my next question to you people out there, when you did see that litter, what did you do about it? Did you stroll on by? Or did you do something else? Did you pick up that bit of litter and pop it in your pocket and take it home? Yes, say some of you. Brilliant, you moved it. Lovely. Well, you are super environment lovers, aren't you? Plastic on the road, you pick it up, you pop it in the bin. Wonderful people. Perhaps we ought to have a little pledge now that we're at the end of this story, that if we're out and about tomorrow or in the future, we're out and about getting our exercise and getting some fresh air, if we see any rubbish that an animal or a bird might be tempted to use in a nest, then maybe we should always pop it in our pocket and take it home to dispose of in a responsible way. Would that be a good thing to do, you think, at the end of this story? And then all the birds can make ordinary nests, and that would be a lovely thing, wouldn't it? Well done, all you people responding. Yes, I've got some nice bin emojis. Didn't even know they were a thing. A rubbish bin emoji. I love it. Yes, come on, people. We'll be pledging, aren't we? Our pledge at the end of the session. Tomorrow, when we're out and about, yes, we are going to be victorious in our rubbish rescuing, putting it in our pocket, putting it in the bin, and saving all those birds. Oh, and a green glove. Didn't know you could get a green glove emoji. I'm learning an awful lot this afternoon. Thank you for your fabulous responses, everybody. Does anybody have any final thoughts or ideas they'd like to share with us all now? Take a few moments to reflect on Seagull and his nest building, his poor friends with their plastic nests. Anything that you'd like to offer as your final thoughts? Yes, thank you. That's an interesting one, isn't it? We should be trying to think about not just looking after the litter that we do find, but also perhaps reducing our plastic consumption in the first place. Maybe we don't need all those plastic items after all. I got a nice thumbs up from somebody. Thank you. Recycle more, definitely. Some nice, yeah, rubbish is gross. I agree. It's not nice to look at, is it? For one thing, not very pleasant. Thank you for your time this afternoon, you lovely environment lovers. I shall be thinking of you when I'm out on my walk tomorrow, picking up any rubbish that I see so that it doesn't trap any wild animals. And hopefully you will be able to join us at this time next week, where we're going to be reading another Thought Box tale, 4 o'clock on Wednesday. I think it's something about a lizard. The title escapes me. I'm terribly sorry, Rachel. The title escapes me, but I've got a feeling it's a lizard tale.
Lizard's Wonderful Walk next week.
Lizard's Wonderful Walk. There we go. So from seagulls to lizards. Hopefully many of you will come back and join us then.
Wonderful. And just to say, if you wanted to listen to Jo tell this story again, or any of the stories that we've told so far, we've now put them all up on the Thoughtbox website, so you can find them all. So if you go to the Thoughtbox website, which is www.thoughtboxeducation.com/support, you'll find all the stories there. So maybe ask an adult to help you and you can listen to them again. And we'll be putting this story up later this evening. But thank you, Jo, for reading us the story today. It's been great having you and lovely to see all of you again here. See you all again soon. Have a good afternoon.